why won't you start? Does that sound familiar? Is that you? Stay to the end of this video. 5 reasons why your mower won't start. They're pretty simple. Basic tools will fix them. Check it out. Okay, so in no particular order, 5 things that will stop your mower from starting when you most need it to. As you can see, this mower is not in showroom condition. It was out in the weather under some decking. So we are going to have a look at it. I know there are some things wrong with this mower, so I'm going to go through those right now. So first thing, like I said, no particular order, is fuel. One of the biggest things that will stop a mower from starting, or any small engine from that fact, is your fuel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the fuel cap and I'm going to get you a close-up of what it looks like inside the fuel tank. All right, so I'm hoping that you'll be able to see properly in the GoPro or focus, but you can see in there is a brownie coloured liquid, and there's also a clear liquid. Now if I wobble that, you'll see how there is definitely 2 liquids in there. Now what that is water mixed with fuel. So I'll drain that out of there and I'll show you. That right there is one of the biggest things that will stop an engine starting, because engines, or combustion engines, I will say, don't run on water. They require gasoline only. So let's drain that out and I'll show you what that looks like in a clear container. So there are a few ways you can drain your fuel tank. This particular Briggs & Stratton, the carburetor is mounted on top of the fuel tank, which is a very common setup, rather than having a remote tank with a fuel line to your carburetor. So I also need to check the air filter in this. So I'm going to take the air filter off and then take this whole assembly off. But like I said, very basic tools required: flathead screwdriver and a couple of sockets. Out, we will have a governor spring on here. So I've taken the 2 bolts out, I've taken off the throttle cable, I've been able to move that forward. Now I can just have a look at the top of this air cleaner, which is good. Now I can just slowly start to work this out. So always be careful you don't drop stuff down inside a carburetor. So now we can see what's going on here. So I basically have, if I can bring you in a little bit closer, make you dizzy. So as you can see, we have one more attachment here, governing springs. Don't be too worried about those. You just got to make sure that you put them back in the right spot. Just like that. Alright, let's have a look and see what this fuel looks like in here. I'm guessing it's not going to be amazing, apart from all the grubs. So let's see, what have we got? Just tilt the camera up a little bit so you can see. We have a mixture, and you can clearly see, if I get my pointing screwdriver again, separation between the water and the fuel. Look at that. Don't mind the dirt in there, that was just from the top of the tank when I tipped it and I wasn't too worried about. But if you see how they won't mix, even if we shake it up with a really good shake, eventually they will settle again and they will separate, because water and fuel don't mix. I'll leave that settle for a second. As you can see, it's already starting to create the layer of separation. I'll let that settle and then we'll come back to it. I've just drained that fuel out of there, the rest of it, and I'm going to stand this upright. I've stuffed a rag in so it's down to, you know, the bottom half of the tank. It can sit there and it can absorb the rest of the moisture that's in there, and then we'll have a clean tank. All right, let's jump on to number 2. Number 2, spark plug. It's always good to check your spark plug. Now this one here, apart from having some sort of fur on it, does have, and you're not really going to be able to see it, maybe if I get a little light on it for you, there is carbon buildup on it, which you're probably not going to be able to see because it won't focus properly on it, but there is some chunky carbon buildup on it. So I'll show you how to very easily give that a quick clean. So whilst you've got it still in your socket, you can even put it back on here if you want to, if that's easier for you. Keep your fingers a little bit further away. Just get yourself a cheap one of these, or you can even use a bit of Scotch-Brite, even some sandpaper if it's not too coarse. You basically just want to clean up in between where the electrode throws a spark. So in there's a gap, which hopefully you can see it a bit better there. You can see there's a gap. That gap's set. Every manufacturer has a different setting. For the sake of this, I'm not going to go into that, but you would assume if your mower was running last season and no one's fiddled with it, that gap should still be the same. Plugs do go bad, but the main thing is they get oil build up on them. If your engine's getting older and then the engine's turned off, it sits there, it goes off, and then it won't throw a spark. So hence your fuel won't ignite, the mower won't start. So that's clean now. I'll put that back in again. So the next thing before I go too crazy is, as you saw, I took the air filter off. Now, what a lot of people do is they take the air filter off these and they go, oh, that looks pretty good. You know, like, yeah, you could see, you know, it's not crumbly, it hasn't started to deteriorate. But this engine doesn't draw air from anywhere up here. This engine draws air from here. Now, as you can see, this is heavily caked. So if I just peel back that foam a bit, you can see underneath there's the green clean foam, right? Right there. This is just absolutely soaked with oil and debris. The foam's starting to break down on this side, as you can see if I scrape that back. That right there, that's just dirt that's got in there. A bit of oil, could have a bit of blow-by happening, and that is just going to absolutely render the ability for this engine to start, because as we know, you need oxygen as a part of the combustion cycle. That's just going to completely render this engine unable to breathe, and it will not start. That is a big thing for engines not starting. All right, so quick recap. We had fuel was number 1. We had spark, number 2. We had air, or the air filter, and the ability for the engine to breathe is number 3. Number 4 is your exhaust. Now people might say, what do you mean the exhaust? Well, what happens is, and this particular exhaust design is not a great example of that, but wasps and bees and insects, they make their little mud nests inside here and they block these up. And it happens a lot on 2-strokes as well, anything from brush cutters, chainsaws, that sort of thing. But the wasps will make a mud nest in there, and then the engine, even though the valves are opening for the exhaust actually can't get out. So the engine can't complete a proper combustion cycle, so it will not start. And you'll see it, there'll be bits of brown mud stuck around the outside here, and if you look close enough, you'll see that all these holes will be blocked. That's a really key thing to check, especially if you live in an area where you know you have wasps activity, insect activity, because that is something that over the years I've seen so many people take their mowers in for repair, or their small equipment in for repair, and the mower shop or the small engine shop simply has to pull the exhaust off, they clean it out and it starts, bang, and they charge the client some unruly amount of money just for cleaning off a bit of insect debris. So number 4, always check your exhaust. All right, so I'm going to put this mower back together again, put the fuel tank back on, the air filter back on. Now, disclaimer, this mower actually wouldn't run before this, which is why I decided to do it. This is not a complete strip down, it's not a rebuild or anything like that. It's just 5 things to check. That's always the first 5 things that I check when something won't run. Small engine, big engine, these 5 things are always key. Now you do have other things to think about. Newer 4-stroke engines and even smaller, older 4-stroke engines have low oil alerts. So if a connection is not made, the circuit will short out, or you'll have a dead short, and the ignition circuit of the engine will be cut. Hence, no spark, so your engine won't run. So if you're running your engine on a hill, if you're mowing on a hill and it suddenly cuts out for no reason, you've got fuel and all these other things are okay, and you do have a low oil sensor and it cuts out, that's probably why. There is a workaround. You can unplug the sensor. If you start it and it starts, then you know that that's your issue. I wouldn't recommend running an engine with the low oil sensor disconnected unless you're very familiar with engines and on top of your maintenance. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the fuel tank and air filter assembly back on again, and then we'll get on to number 5. Let's see if I can get this filter back on again. I don't know if this mower is actually going to start with this filter the way it is, to be honest with you. Look, if I give you an idea of what it's like, I might just, you wouldn't do this normally, but just scratch a bit of this stuff off here so it has a chance to breathe. I'll just give this a quick clean and then I'll come back. All right, so it's not too bad. It's not ideal. Will it start? Probably. Would I leave it like this for a long time and use it? Probably not, but hey. Let's get that back in there. All right, so get this back together for you guys and then we'll get it back on the carby. On here. I think the reason it wouldn't come off the first time was just because it was too ganked on there. All right, let's get this back together. All right, I'm just want to make sure everything's working properly under here. I'm just going to hit this. You can either use brake cleaner or, you know, I prefer to use carburetor cleaner because that way you know that it won't damage. It won't damage any of your seals. So I'll just let that all have a bit of a run around in there for a minute. An update in the fuel, as you can see. Straighten the camera a bit. Separated again. So that's only been probably 5 minutes and that has separated. Okay, the other reason, different mower. This mower has a bail on it, or a safety catch, or a release, whatever you want to call it, technically known as the bail. But what that does is, down here, as you can see, that actuates. And these work on all different ways. Some of them just allow the circuit to be completed, like I spoke about before, but these cables, they rust up or they break down here, you don't see it. They even come unclipped, like this cable, as you can see, it's not really that, like that comes out pretty easy. That's one other thing. That's reason number 5 why your mower might not be starting, is because that safety, which is there for the reason to stop your mower if you have to in a hurry, has become disconnected. All right, let's go back to the workbench. Alrighty, got Nimmy making a cameo because she loves a mower. Now this mower is going to get some other attention. I'll do another video on a bit of a like a mower maintenance video, because as you can see at the moment, it doesn't sort of, I don't know, it's just the axles are a bit seized up on it. It's just not really happy. But anyway, I lifted it down. Let's give it a few primes and see if it starts. Okay, give it. Good go. What I've actually done is, while that started to run away on me, the engine, I didn't realise that I've actually done the throttle cable up in the wrong spot. So I'll just change that now. you can generally see there's always a marking on the cable. There's a marking on a lot of things like that sort of stuff when you pull it off. Just put it back to where it was. Now I'm going to keep this deck down because the blades underneath are pretty rusty and I hate for anything to come flying out. So let's have another look at that. Mimi, pop out. Good girl. So it's definitely got some other carburetor problems, but as you can see, it's running. It's needs some work, this mower, but I just wanted to get the point across that there are these basic things that cause mowers not to start, especially once they've been stored for a while. But as you would have seen, there's no way this mower would have started with that fuel in it. So as a general rule of thumb, I think she's doing pretty well. So I'm going to wrap this video up here, but I'm going to do another video because that carburetor needs to be serviced. So I'm going to service that carburetor, and then we'll get this thing running like a dream again. I'll catch you soon.